I was always chasing that get, which I've now found out 95% of people, if they don't have the skills, are doing the same thing. So, yeah, once you actually learn or understand or have the awareness that you can have fulfillment in all of the areas of your life, your health, your relationships, and your wealth, when you start designing it and creating it for the way you love it, life and business becomes a hell of a lot more enjoyable and a lot more relaxing.
Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stevenson, the Odd Man.
Greetings and salutations. Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, where our goal is to inspire our listeners to live their best, audacious lives ever. I'm totally thrilled to have you here with us and truly appreciate you've taken time out of your schedule to spend it here with us and tune in and check out the program. Like an eagle soaring through the sky, embracing audacious living allows us to rise above challenges and limitations, spreading our wings to reach new heights of success and fulfillment. Now, speaking of embracing audacity, our guest today, Leigh Woolard, is a shining example of someone who has fearlessly pursued his passions to transform his life and the lives of others. Leigh is a seasoned business and life coach who made a courageous shift from running a successful digital marketing agency to coaching individuals and businesses towards mindset transformation and fulfillment. With over 4 years of coaching experience, Leigh's journey from a serious health scare to a new path of purpose has inspired many to unlock their full potential and create audacious change in their lives. In today's episode, Leigh shares his personal journey of self-discovery and the power of mindset when it comes to overcoming challenges and obstacles that we face, especially in the face of his significant health scare or health diagnosis in his case. His insights and experiences will resonate with anyone seeking to shift their mindset and make positive changes in their lives. So without any further ado, here's my conversation with Leigh. Hey, Leigh, thank you for joining me here today on the Audacious Living Podcast. I appreciate you making the time to do this. Thank you.
Audley, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me on, and hello to your listeners.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, we engage in all sorts of fantastic conversations here on this podcast about ways that we can live our best audacious life. And for a lot of people, oftentimes it starts with our approach to things and our mindset and how we view the world around us. And quite frankly, I believe that's sort of that's the biggest step that happens within our heads first, and how we think about things and view things and approach things, because that can frame the way the rest of our lives, lead out. And so as a business coach, business life coach, sort of specialized in the area of mindset, this is probably right up your alley. So maybe as a starting point, Leigh, I can get you to talk a little about you and the work that you do.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. So I moved into coaching about 4 years ago after a unfavorable health diagnosis put me on a journey to look more inwardly. Now, at the time, I didn't know that's what I was about to do, but I'd spent 17 years running a digital marketing agency, my own business, helping global brands, doing some wonderful, wonderful stuff, and always very grateful for the people I worked with. But I always had this longing and discontent inside of me that I wanted to do more. And like I said, a unfavorable health diagnosis made me pay a bit more attention to what I was doing.
Right.
I fortunately got some great mentors that said, "Hey, Leigh, this is all beginning with what you think." And I said, there's something here. And then, I was able to apply that to my health. Then I started applying it to my relationships, then my business, and then my customers started asking, and then I started helping business owners, and they were all like, "Whoa, this is opening my mind to something I didn't expect." So it's been a fantastic journey, really, really fantastic journey.
If I can ask, Leigh, what was your frame of thinking prior to the health diagnosis?
I just operated by default. So as much as I'd grown a great little business. It was more of a lifestyle business because I was very focused on being a father. I had got three wonderful boys. My dad came from a generation where they worked hard. So I'm not saying I didn't see him, but I didn't see him a lot. So I didn't want my boys to have that. And that's not knocking my
Sure.
father.
No,
It's
no.
just, like a lot of dads, that's the generation. We work hard and provide for our families. But I bumped into so many, call it older entrepreneurs, and, said, I'm going into business. What's the bit of advice you could give? And they all turned around and said, spend as much time with your family because I never did. Or I wish I'd spent more time with my kids.
Right.
And it was too much of a pattern. And I thought, well, if they're all saying it, do it.
Right.
So that's how, I operated like that. I would turn up every day. And a lot of the times I operated in a place of, call it stress, because I thought that's what came with business.
It's supposed to be.
Yeah. And look, and again, we were doing okay. Like I
Sure.
said, some great customers and some great brands, but there were times where I was like, whoa, this is heavy to carry and try and be a dad and try and be a present husband and try and be a friend. And yeah, so it sometimes got on top, but I think that's understandable, especially when you don't have other skills. And that's
right.
what it led me on to.
I think sometimes happens, I'd be curious to get your thoughts on this, but I think sometimes what happens is because we're getting by, right? Then we think we've done a great job, even though there's that cost of getting by, right? So you talked about, not being, people spending time with their family, or maybe there's burnout or stress or exhaustion, but because we're still getting, we're getting the check boxes off, regardless how we get there, we think we're doing good. But oftentimes we're still not where we need to be, and that's what can be detrimental to us.
Absolutely. And there was a key word you used quite a lot then, which was getting. I was always, I was getting more. When I get more in my business, I'll create more time. When I get more money, I'll spend more time with my family, or I'll look after my health a bit more. And I was always chasing that get, which I've now found out 95% of people, if they don't have the skills, are doing the same thing. So once you actually learn or understand or have the awareness that you can have fulfillment in all of the areas of your life, your health, your relationships, and your wealth, when you start designing it and creating it for the way you love it, life and business becomes a hell of a lot more enjoyable and a lot more relaxing.
It's fascinating the things that we tell ourselves, right? When this happens, I'll do this. When this happens, I'll do that. And the lack of recognition is that there's no reason you can't start today. The journey itself, there's great value in the journey, but there's such an emphasis placed on that final destination, that outcome, that thing that we get. And the real growth happens not at the end, it's through the entire process. And so why not start now?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think we're conditioned, or when we grow up, to go, oh, that's the dream. That's what you've got to aim for. And quite often that can become overwhelming when you get older because your level of responsibility goes up. But it's always in the distance. And one of the things I've learned to be able to do is just in the moment. What am I doing today? Coming on and seeing you and being here with your listeners. And okay, what can I give today that's going to impact them? Because that's part of my vision. But also, what can I give today to myself, to my family, and the people around me that will take me one step in that direction?
Yeah, I like that. I do love that. And it's because you're essentially taking that mental pause, right, in that moment, and you're stopping and you're and that's where the things like appreciation, gratitude come into play, right? Because you're pausing, you're stopping, you're saying, hey, I got this and I got that, and things are going, I'm not doing too bad here. And acknowledging that you may not check every single box the exact same way you want it, but there are things that you have in this moment that are hugely beneficial to you.
Yep. Pausing is a wonderful thing. And I'd never used to do it. It was always move on to the next thing, next. And I'd already be thinking about the next thing the day before.
Right.
Whereas now, just in the queue at the petrol station or the supermarket, whatever opportunity I get, or the traffic lights, I'll just stop for a minute and go, okay, where are you now? What's been happening today?
Yep.
What have you enjoyed? What are you grateful for? And it's been a real catalyst to me. Number one, changing my physiology and how I am as a person, but also the way I operate in business, in my relationships, the way I coach people, the way I coach kids football, whatever it may be.
Yeah. So let's just talk a little bit about the health scare that you had and sort of what the initial sort of response was, and what you did to sort of move through that to get yourself to the other side.
Sure, sure. So I this is about July 2019. I started to not feel great. And I'm a fairly healthy person. Like I've done a fair few marathons and always looked after myself. But I did work hard and then be a parent. And I didn't, yeah. So I wasn't feeling great. I was playing football in the garden with my kids, or soccer, as it can be
Yep.
called in different parts of the world. And I've got twin boys that are at the time were 9 years old.
Okay.
And we play, and it's them two usually versus me. And then I just couldn't go. And I can still remember them running around me going, Dad, Dad, are you giving up? Are you giving up? And they know me. It wasn't in my nature to do that. I'll push them as hard, fair as I can, but help them grow.
Sure.
Anyway, I couldn't go. And my wife came outside and she said, something's wrong. You need to get checked. And I said, yeah, sure. And I thought, oh, I've got a virus or something that I just can't shake.
Right. Right.
I went and had a blood test, and then they said, "I will contact you in about 3 days and let you know the results." Start anyway. My phone rang that night, and they said, "We want to see you. You're going in first thing in the morning. You're going to have a bone marrow done." Even then, I was still a little bit like, I said, "I'll come see you in the morning. I'm not going to come in now."
Right.
They did the test, and then on the 1st of August 2019, which is the morning of my twin boy's 10th birthday, I got the diagnosis that I had bone cancer. Now, we were about to have 15 kids come over for a kid's birthday party, and my
Wow.
wife's ringing me as I'm in the hospital, and I told her I was just going, everything's going to be fine,
Right.
playing
Right.
off as we do. And I walked into the room, and there was a panel of doctors there, and I sort of went, whoa, this doesn't look like it might be a virus.
Mm.
However, the moment they gave me the diagnosis, something inside my brain just went, I'm going to figure this out.
Right.
And there was no emotion or poor me or keep feeling, this is it. I did ask them, how long have I got? Because I thought if they know and they know it's 2 weeks, then I need to get on my bike and figure this out even faster.
Right. Right.
They said, look, we don't know, but it can be. So you got to keep an eye on it, and we're going to support you. So I had to go home and tell my wife, and obviously she was like, let's cancel the party. I said, no, we haven't thought about this yet. So we had the kids over, and then we started to discuss what the next plan was going to be. So that was kind of the initial awakening to it.
I do. So many parts of your story that I really much appreciated, but certainly not responding with emotion. You sort of talked about that you didn't sort of let emotion kind of guide you, and sometimes that can, our emotions that take our minds all sorts of places. When you talk about the power of our thoughts, I think the power of our emotions also equally come into play here. That. Now I want to be clear. It's not that you were suppressing the emotions; you just weren't letting them take over.
I'd done it since I was a kid. I'd suppressed emotions since I was a kid just because it was the way I was. I had two very young parents. So I was hanging around adults quite quickly, and I just didn't know how to express it. So this was looking back now, I'm not surprised I acted that way. And I find in particular with men who I do talk to, I find a lot of them say, yeah, I'm the same. Females seem to be a lot better at expressing them. And if you look at, I guess, history, fathers are very good at putting their arms around their daughters and saying, it's okay, darling, you can cry it out, and they express it. Whereas for boys, it's, oi, man up, or get on with it. So we suppress it or push it to the side. And that's the catalyst. Once I actually went on the discovery, was that suppression of the emotion was what got me to be holding stuff in my bones.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. No, it's that's suppression. It really can have a powerful impact on us more than we realize. And there's been tons of studies about the connection to that and our health, and what that and what drives that, and I think more than anything else, even as you're speaking, it just reinforces the importance of why we need to kind of let things go and let things out because of the harm that can do to our bodies.
And the first time, for anyone who is listening, the first time doing that is really challenging, especially if you're not programmed to do it. I can remember the first time I did it, and it took me like courage to be able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I cried for 3 days. Well, I'd never done that in my life, but I managed. When I say 3 days, it wasn't three full
No.
days I was awake, but the after effect of it was built up for 3 days.
Right.
And I thought, God, if this is what it feels like every time you do it, I can't do this. So then I started to go back a little bit again, and then I did it again, and I was a little bit better. And then I think by the third time, I was like, actually, this isn't a weakness. This is actually quite liberating.
Yeah.
And it's not just emotion about relationships or your health. It can be, actually, I'm having this challenge in this business, rather than going, oh, everything's okay.
Right.
When it's not.
Right. It's really interesting, and I'm glad you sort of touched on the weakness thing, because for many it's just not. I don't want to be vulnerable, or I don't want to be seen as being weak. I want to be strong, or I don't like. There's all these things again that we tell ourselves that force us to suppress these emotions, whereby it really isn't the case at all. I mean, the strongest people are the ones that can stand up a room full of others and say, look, I don't have the answer, or I'm tired, or I don't know where to go, or I'm stuck. Those aren't weak words. Those aren't weak words. It takes a lot of power to stand up, and courage and boldness. I don't even throw in the word audacity to do those things.
Definitely audacious, definitely.
So and I also should say 2019 wasn't all that long ago, Leigh.
No.
This is fairly recent that you've managed to work through this. When did you sort of get to the other side officially?
Yeah. So initially they started me with some chemotherapy drugs,
Mm-hmm.
and I was feeling terrible, like sleeping. And then all of a sudden my business was affected from that, because I was struggling physically with my health, wasn't able to do the output that I used to do. So about a month in, I'm scrolling through social media, and an advert came up in front of me from a wise old gentleman, and he said, your way's not working. Why don't you try mine? And I thought, he's absolutely right. And he looks pretty wise, so I'll dive in. So I had a look at what he was talking about, and he talked about us having negative emotions. So things like worry, doubt, fear, and how when you suppress them, that suppression becomes a form of depression. It puts the body at dis-ease, and then you end up with the result. And I was like, wow, that's a diagram I can understand. It was so simplified. So I dived in, and he became my mentor for the next 18 months. That was Bob Proctor. So for those that don't know, he helped people in the personal development industry for over 60 years. And it was him who said to me, Leigh, this is all beginning from your thoughts. I thought, God, he's the only person who's ever had the courage or the know-how to know that's where it is. And like I said to you before, I was holding stuff in all the time. Not
Right.
that I'd had anything traumatic done. I just didn't know how to express emotions. When things were challenging, I didn't know how to express that they were challenging. And I'd done it since I was a kid. So having this release all of a sudden and understanding, it was like, I've been given permission to do this now. And although I had to work at it, so I started to be able to create a vision for the life that I wanted. And at the time, my story was, well, I couldn't play football with my kids.
Right.
So I started every day seeing myself playing football with my kids, rolling around in the grass and having a laugh and smelling the freshly cut grass, and walking with my wife on the beach. And at that first day, then I can remember writing down in my journal and thinking about it. My life was so far away from that.
Wow.
Thinking, do you know what? I've got nothing to lose, everything to gain.
Right.
It's not something I found it woo-hooey like at the start, but I was like, do you know what? I've got nothing to lose. This is something now that you've got to go beyond taking drugs or something to fix you, because I'd already just lost 2 friends who went down the chemotherapy route, told they'd be fine, and then they passed away. And I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm not missing my kids growing up. I'm not planning my future travels with my wife that we talked about. So about a month into working with him, I just made a decision and went, I'm not doing these drugs anymore. And I stopped actually on my birthday. That's how I remember, of November. And the day after, my wife said to me, she said, you're not enjoying this, are you? I said, no, not really.
Oh.
She says, why don't you stop? Meaning the drugs. I said, actually, I have yesterday. She goes, I know you, and I knew you would. However, if you get worse, you're back on it. I said, absolutely. Oh, I then had a blood test in the February and they said, oh, things are starting to look great. The drug must be working. And I didn't have the courage to tell them that I wasn't taking it. I was like, oh, great. Okay. Because I was still processing and doing visualization work,
Yes, yes.
taking breath work, just taking my time, calming everything down and releasing a lot from my what I'd had in the past. Fast forward another 3 months, so call it about June. I go back in for another blood test, and then I get called in, and they said everything's going fantastic. You're in remission, and I was like, whoa. At this point, I knew I had to say something, and I said, look, I actually stopped taking the drug in November, but I've been working on myself, and you don't know what you're doing. You could kill yourself. And, I'm so grateful to the people in the hospital. The doctors were amazing. They helped me through a very important part. But who I'd become in that 6 months was a very different person, as in still kind, but this person was able to connect with his inner self and go, okay, this is powerful now. And me being me, my brain started to go, what happens if I apply this in my relationship? Or what happens if I apply this in my business? And that's when life really shifted for me.
Mm. Yeah, no, and it's funny because I was gonna the question I was gonna next question I was gonna ask you about was when you made that connection with the business because obviously part of your work is working with entrepreneurs and helping them, but this mindset is what you use to assist them with that. So I was curious when that connection was made that it could also apply in the business world.
Yeah. Well, actually, one of my sons had a bit of a health issue at the time.
Okay.
And we tried all different ways to get him better and we couldn't do it. And then I did this with him for 3 weeks. Now, what I noticed in that moment was being a child, they don't carry the baggage and they can flip very quickly. And then I was like, whoa. And it felt like I was getting all of these signals to test it.
Yes.
So then I'd done the visualization work and it was always, I was told, look, when you do this, your life is going to head on that route and it'll be that or something better. And again, I had no foresight to see what was about to happen to me around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
And my son's football coach had to move away for work, so they didn't have a coach. And if all the parents were like, Leigh, you'd be perfect, do it. And I was umming and ahhing whether I should. And it was one of the greatest gifts I've ever had. I now play football with my kids on a Tuesday night, a Saturday, and a Sunday. The team was doing okay. We then went undefeated, and I was applying these same principles. So last season we went undefeated. They'd set a vision for themselves, and truthfully, when they set it, I thought it's quite audacious because they hadn't won a lot of games in 6 years.
Right.
But their belief changed. They started to see it. We encouraged them to make mistakes and feel good about it because it was a stepping stone.
Yep.
And quickly, what we saw were these kids making mistakes and growing. So then I was like, okay, I'm applying this in areas of my life now. What if I put this into business? So the customers that I had, I started to say, hey, would you be interested if we applied some of this and showed you? And then they were like, whoa. And their results just started changing fast. And then most of them were like, you need to be doing this. It's great that you can teach people how to market their business.
Right.
But this is stuff now that's impacting me in my home life.
Yes.
And I never thought that would happen. And for me, that's one of the greatest rewards because I'm seeing in particular business owners who are busy all the time, who are not seeing their kids or their relationships challenged because they're stressed because of what's going on at work. We start to undo those and make it something they love. And when they come back from a holiday, a family vacation, the first one they've done in 10 years and go, do you know what? That was the best family vacation I've ever had. I was fully present. I didn't answer any emails. And my wife actually likes me again, or my partner likes me again. And the kids, I could see the way they were responding and I felt great. And you go, okay, this is the impact now. This is where you start to see people. It's not just me now, it's their families. That's the most beautiful thing.
It is wonderful. Even the statement of the fact that our thoughts can create what happens on the outside of us is just that I gotta tell you, Leigh, that statement in itself is just so powerful. And when you stop and really put thought into how you can create your outside world, I think it's a game changer. It really is. And not that you just it's not just something that you do during times of adversity and trouble. It's easy, right? It's easy when things aren't going well and we can go, okay, just think positive, think positive, think positive, and I want better. Sure, that's easy. But to sustain it all the time and to always be in that frame, that zone of thinking, that mindset, it's amazing. It really is great work you're doing.
Also, like you said, then it's easy for people when they come to me to already have their back against the wall.
Yes.
That's why they want help, and they're in
Yes.
pain for whatever reason it is, whether it's a business problem, a health problem, a relationship problem, whatever. But if you can get an awareness to go, okay, these people keep saying this, and if I can do this now, you don't have to or work your way through a big challenge. You can start to apply it to whatever challenges you've got in your life right now.
Mm-hmm.
Then you start to go, okay, I really want to design what I would love. What do I want my business? It's not just about money. Yes,
Yep.
maybe some people are doing things in their business, which is like, do you know what? I'm working with two people at the moment that they take up all my time and they're not actually in alignment with my values. Okay. How do you get more people that are in alignment with your values? How do you create a business where you wake up on a day and you go, I can't wait for today. Can't wait to see who I'm serving, who I'm going to be with, and what's going to come my way, including the challenges, because now I've got tools to be able to handle it.
Hmm. You certainly do. My goodness. It's yeah, again, it's just very powerful. I'd love, if you don't mind, Leigh, if you could, and you said you help people in their business. I wonder if you had an example of a business world example that that you assisted someone to get to that better place.
Yeah, it's a few different ones, and I'll start with my favorite one.
Okay.
So during COVID, obviously things shut down a bit. So my
Sure.
agency at the time, when I say lost customers, we couldn't serve them.
Sure.
Well, I started to look, well, who's popping their head up at this time? And people were doing a lot of online courses. So again, I used this visualization of what it would look like. And just so your listeners know, the first 3 months, I didn't have one customer.
Okay.
So you go through a period sometimes where it's challenging and you're like, okay, but I believe in this process. And then quite quickly, all of a sudden, things started to grow. Now, looking back in hindsight, when you start a new business, if somebody said to you, the first 3 months is going to be really challenging, but then it goes really quickly, you're willing, you do it.
Right.
My first business took me 4 years to grow. This one took 6 months. First 3 months, no customers. Within the next 3 months, I had 16.
Wow.
Because I started to understand my message and what I was doing.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
In that moment, I got to help some people who were making an impact on the world. Now, I helped some people that were not having such a big impact. It was more about a commodity or what they had, but people that were helping families. And it was just so inspiring to watch. And one particular guy in Canada, he helps families who've got fetal alcohol spectrum disorder from the children. And it's incredible to watch somebody be able to apply the principles, see how they want their business to be, and then go quantum leaps and help more families. So he went on to help nearly 250 families last year.
Yes.
That, again, for me, it's not the number of what he did. It was more about there's 250 families and the people in the family that are changed. And it's not just the parents and just the child with FASD. It can be brothers and sisters around that. Then when you see their testimonials of them being in his program and in his world and him helping them over the course of a year and them saying, my life's changed, it's like, wow. And that can be one example of someone making an impact.
Right. Right.
There's business owners now that can be doing multiple millions of dollars that I help, and they have the same challenges, just at a different level. They have the same pattern. So, you don't, if you're sat there listening now and you're thinking, well, I don't have a business that's multiple millions of dollars, or I haven't helped 250 families, they have the exact same issues that we do at whatever level we're at.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're able to do is start to go, okay, what's the process when you have a challenge? How do you work through it? How do you see yourself first? What is your thought around it? And yeah, sometimes it's difficult. The reality is when you're growing, the bigger the challenge, the bigger your growth is going to be. And, some people want, the thing I get a lot, I want to have $1 million business. Okay, great. Lots of people want that, or they want the big home or whatever, but it's, are you willing to do the growth that's going to allow you to have that? Because it doesn't come easy. That's the reality. It doesn't come easy to anybody. And whoever tells you that it does, maybe an opposite way.
Right. No, absolutely not. It does not come easy. The process is not. But again, the big thing is understanding where it starts, where the starting point is. And that's with us in our mind that if that doesn't change, if that vision is not there and it's not clear and we're not being present, we talk about gratitude and appreciation. If those things aren't active in your life, then it's going to be a tougher road for certain. Not that it can't be done. I think it
Yeah.
still can be done. There'll be a cost, I believe. Whether it be your health, your relationships, or whatever, there will be a cost to get this goal. It's really how you want to, when you get there, what state do you want to be in, right? Because as I said earlier, it's that journey along the pathways we find the true growth, not the end goal. So,
And
I
it's
think
having the courage to be able to spot that and say, actually,
great
I'm
point.
going to spend the next 20, 30 years enjoying it
Great point.
rather than rushing to get to this thing that actually is always eluding you until the end where you go, actually, I wasn't the person that I wanted to be.
Right. Right. Absolutely. I would imagine that along the way, there's even lessons that you've learned yourself about yourself and the world around you, because you've essentially pivoted your business a little bit too, right? So I'm just curious if there's anything you could share in that regard.
Absolutely. So for me, like I said to you, I always had this longing internally that I wanted to help people in a different way. And it was wonderful. Like I said, grateful that I got to help some amazing people build some very big businesses.
Mhm.
But it wasn't helping people on a level where they're able to connect with themselves and go, do you know what? My life has transformed. So for me, what happened was, okay, I want to get into the coaching. And I was a bit, I'll coach people on how to do a digital business.
Right.
But there was still a longing and a discontent. And then it was like, okay, now you've got to be courageous and step out there and put yourself out there and start effectively new.
Right.
Now, the old version of me wouldn't have been able to maintain it and do it. The new version of me is right. I have a purpose now. This is what lights me up and what I love. This is why I do it. Now, that's me. The same thing with everybody that I support. What is it that you love? That's the question I'd always ask. What would you love? Because if you're not living that or taking the steps towards it now, you're going to get to the end and regret it. So ask yourself every day, what would I love? What would I love today to look like? What would I love to be as a father? What would I love to be as a partner? What would I love to be in my office? What would I love to be to my customers? What would I love to be if I'm a guest on a podcast? Yeah.
Yeah.
How can I help others?
Having that clear vision, right? That's what we're talking about. Having that clear vision. Yeah.
It just acts as a compass to go, okay, that's
Sure.
where I want to go.
Yep.
What step can I take today that takes me in that direction? Okay, and I've given it my best. And it takes away the rush then as well. You don't have to have this figured out in the next 30 days. Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep working towards it.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Leigh, this has been a phenomenal chat. And I so appreciate you taking the time to do this. One last question before we go, and really for those listeners that are appreciating the things that you're saying, understand it, because I think people, the things that we're talking about here today. It's not new. It's not lost on anyone. It's like, well, it's not a new complex thing they've never heard of. They've heard of it, but there's oftentimes that thing that's preventing them from taking that first step and moving forward. What advice would you have to those individuals?
Find a book. Find a book first and just start reading it. The one I recommend and gift to most people is The Power of the Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy. Very simple to read. And like you said, spiritual principles have been around for thousands of years.
Mm-hmm.
The first step is to gaining awareness. So if you can give yourself a little bit of time, read one chapter a week. That was the best advice I'd got from a mentor of mine, which was, even if the temptation is to read the whole book and want the answer by the time you get to the end. Spend a week and really sit in it. And even if it's a topic, if you're reading it about, money and business, and that's not what's bothering, still read it and understand the underlying message that's in it. That awareness was the thing I never used to have.
Right.
And it's the thing that I notice sometimes people around me don't have. I don't judge them, but I go, whoa, that version of me wouldn't have had the awareness. Now he does. Okay. How do I use my vision? How do I use my imagination? And then how do I take action in alignment with what I would love?
Got you. No, I think it makes sense, and I like the idea of asking that question. How can I? Because what you're doing is you're veiling yourself to the possibilities. And once you in that frame of thinking, where you're thinking about what the possibilities are, they're absolutely endless. I know that's a cliche that's been used before, and it's probably corny to some, but there is some truth to that. The possibilities are endless when we think that way, and so I think that's a great way to approach life. Lee, for listeners that want to catch up with you or learn more about your work, where can we send them?
Best place, go to YouTube or Instagram, whichever one's your favorite platform. I release videos every week. My objective is for you to just learn as much. So if you haven't got a book or you're waiting for the book to come, jump on and listen to some of the videos. Hopefully you'll find one in there that will inspire you. A lot of it has the message of the underlying principles and how I apply it.
Yep.
And I'd love to hear from them if they have a success or a challenge or an obstacle. And we'll answer that question in another video.
I love it. I love it. Leigh, this has been absolutely awesome. I really appreciate you again, like I said, off the top, taking the time to do this. Phenomenal messaging, phenomenal work. Congratulations on overcoming your own personal challenges and the journey that you went on to get to this place. And I think the piece around that I really appreciate that with your work that you're doing is you take your challenge, you take your experiences, now you're using those to help others. So congratulations.
Thank you, Audley. Thank you so much. Wonderful to be on here. I really appreciate you.
Back, we're here on the podcast. After listening to Leigh's story, one key takeaway is the importance of self-awareness and transformative power of embracing vulnerability and authenticity in our journey towards that audacious living. By acknowledging our emotions, releasing suppressed feelings, and envisioning the life we truly desire, we can create meaningful change and lead a more fulfilling existence. If you've been inspired or touched by Leigh's stories and want to connect with him directly, you certainly can do so simply by looking for his contact details. We'll make sure that's in the show notes available for you. I'd encourage you to reach out to him for personalized coaching and guidance on your own audacious living journey. I want to thank you for joining us on this edition of the Audacious Living Podcast. If you found this episode insightful, please don't forget to like it, follow, or share with others who are on their own path of audacious living. Together, let's continue to grow and inspire each other to live our best audacious lives. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Leigh Stevenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.